Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Today, here for the first time in a little while here at the Kansas Speedway on a very hazy, very overcast day here today. Never seen weather quite like this here in our Monday night races, but sure enough, quite a bit of fog here on the raceway here today. But we are here at the Kansas Speedway for the second time here in league history. The first time was back in the ARCA car back at the very beginning of 2024. And that race was won by Daniel Wiles here at this 1.5 mile speedway. And of course, still following along with the Real World 2003 NASCAR racing season. In the real world, it was taken home by none other than Ryan Newman here. You can look at the weather here, 66 degrees outside with 100% humidity, completely overcast, and you can see how much fog is here over the raceway. Even with that 14-mile-per-hour wind, it is still incredibly foggy here today, so we're going to have to see how that affects these drivers. Hopefully it doesn't result in any sort of incidences, and honestly, hopefully it doesn't mess up our camera angles here at all, because some of these cameras point all the way across the speedway, and I'm worried we might be able to see these cars when they're at the far side of the track. That said, though, we're already starting to get things rolling here, so how about we take a look down at our starting lineup here right quick. Alrighty, starting out here on the pole here this evening in the K9P number 188. That is going to be none other than the driver out of Medford, Wisconsin. That's going to be Mr. Joshua Rudolph starting off at the front here today. Starting out beside him in the Liqui Moly 38, it's the driver that has been leading the 2024 championship by a pretty substantial margin so far all throughout this season. That's going to be none other than the 38 of Brandon Vini. Back in third, running a different paint scheme here tonight, or at least a little bit of different alternate colors from what we normally see here. That's going to be the number 93 of Jason Gardner, rolling it off in third. Back and forth, that's going to be the number 44 Harley Davidson entry for Mark Royce, driver out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, rolling off position at number 4. That's going to be the 85 of Brian Spelski back in 5th, followed by Daniel Sparks, Corey Logan, Mark Kluge, and Michael Sparks here to get this thing rolling here today. Green flag already up in the air once again for a very foggy evening, or I guess really more like morning here at the Kansas Speedway. It is still fairly early in the day, and we already have these drivers rolling here. And already we have trouble back in the back. Daniel Sparks getting incredibly loose back there in that M&M's number 4. Nearly loses it heading down the back straightaway here, but manages to hang on to it here. That is going to bump him back a position or two, but he is still going here on the raceway, and I guess that's half the battle here sometimes. And never mind, he is spinning just like that. Caution flag out on the speedway, and it's going to be for none other than Daniel Sparks here on lap number 2. And there's some pretty heavy damage on that number 4 machine. He is not able to get it turned around whatsoever. Now it's pointing in the right direction, but there's some pretty heavy damage on that machine. That is going to require probably some extensive repairs here, so we'll take a look back, try and get a better view of what happened to bring out this caution flag here. You can see riding down there side by side with Corey Logan in that CZ Robotics 24 here. And two of them kind of just come together, and Daniel Sparks, not really anything he can do once that car starts turning to the right, and just a hard smack into the outside wall there. Take another look back here, slow it down here a little bit as we get another replay of this incident in the heavy fog here today at Kansas. Just a little bit of a nudge there, and that's all it took to send her around immediately under the caution flag here on lap number 2 of today's event. And that's a pretty hard impact for that number 4 machine. I'm really concerned about this driver's ability to stay here in today's race. That's going to take a pretty decent amount of repairing to have to get back out here on the speedway, but it's not impossible. We cannot rule that car out until we actually see him drive it back to the hauler. It is possible they'll get it fixed and get back out on the speedway, but I am not holding my breath here. That said, looks like most of the rest of the field going to go ahead and come down pit lane here as well, get a little splash of gas, see if they can't play that into their pit strategy later on in today's event. Not everyone elected to come down there. Mark Royce, Corey Logan, Brian Sabelski all here electing to stay out for this initial caution. They figure, you know what, race literally just started. No need to come down quite right this second, so we'll see if that little splash of fuel makes any sort of difference here. Of course, it is just really only about a lap and a half if you consider green flag pace, and sure enough, actually it looks like these three drivers that elected to stay out are all now coming back down here, as well as a couple of other drivers who pit under that first lap under yellow. They're coming back down here again to try and really eke out every last bit of fuel that they can get here, crammed into the fuel tanks of these race cars. So we'll see how this plays out for them. I would imagine they'll still need to stop here at some point in today's race, even with these little margins of fuel they're getting, but maybe they're hoping for more cautions here on this restart and seeing if they can't get all of their fuel in the early goings of this, as Mark Kluge back there was backing down pit lane. I'm not entirely sure what he was doing there. Corey Logan still electing to stay out. Corey has not pit at all under this yellow flag, so they will be controlling the restart there in that CZ Robotics number 24. Just behind going to be the K9P 188 of Joshua Rudolph. So after this whole pit cycle's worked its way through, we're going to have Corey up +6 from where they qualified, and then Rudolph down a position from where they started. Mark Royce up +1. Everyone else throughout the field pretty much has all lost positions here as well under this yellow. So we'll see how this thing goes for him. It's going to be a single file restart because that caution was so soon. And we have Brian Zabelski coming back down to pit lane, coming to the green flag. Not quite sure what's going on there, but green flag is back up in the air, and we are racing here at Kansas under the heavy fog. And so far, so good around the field, but Sabelski is still down in pit lane under the screen. I don't know what is going on with that driver. I don't think this was a scheduled pit stop for him. So I'm hoping everything is a-okay for the driver of that number 85 machine. Currently looking down here at the battle for the third position here. Brandon Feeney running it deck in third, trying to work his way up to Joshua Rudolph up there in the 188, slowly but surely closing in there, but still a pretty decent gap between them. Call it about 3, maybe 4/10 of a car length. As we do see Sabelski coming back onto pit lane here, so unless he got a penalty under that yellow, I'm not quite sure what else he would be pitting for there coming to the green, but he is working his way back out on the speedway, is currently being scored 1 lap down right now. Side by side here for Jason Gardner and Michael Sparks, battling it out for the 4th position here. Sparks down on the bottom of the speedway, Gardner up high. I say that, it looks like Gardner was thinking about trying to go down low there, going down across the front stretch, but changes his mind on it, goes back up high, loses a pretty decent bit of ground there. Is now Mark Royce is down on pit lane here. No idea what is going on here with these drivers, unless they're all getting penalties for some sort of restart infraction. I'm not quite sure what exactly is going on here. Mark Royce is down on the pit lane without any sort of damage or reason to be down there. I'll tell you what, race fans, we're closing in on it being Halloween. There's heavy fog on the speedway, and now we're having mysterious disappearances with our drivers. I don't know what is going on here, but it's looking like it's starting to shake up to be a little bit of a scary story here. Of course, we do have one more race before Halloween actually rolls around. Next week, heading on over to the Charlotte Motor Speedway on October 28th. I believe that's going to be a night race under the lights at that, so we already have all this mysterious stuff going on here today. Who knows what that race is going to be looking like next Monday night. You can see Mark Royce there coming back up onto the speedway. So both drivers down in their pit boxes for... Well, Sabelski was only down there for about 16 seconds. Royce was down there for a full minute. So Royce, now being scored 3 laps down, definitely looks like he probably did get a penalty of some sort to end up down there. But Sabelski, I'm not so sure about. But already 10 laps in the books. Now that we've got these things green flag racing, these laps are ticking by pretty darn quickly here. Looks like about 30.6, 30.7 area lap times here. And right now, looking at the battle between Sparks and Feeney for third. Of course, that 44 down there is not a battle for position. That is Mark Royce, who is going to score a couple laps down here. Are they thinking about going 3 wide into the corner? Not quite, but it looked like the intention could have been there should the opportunity have opened itself up. But just like that, Sparks is going to be able to get around Feeney there. Will we see this driver strike back here going down into turns 3 and 4? Going way down to the bottom here compared to Sparks. But it doesn't really look like he's gaining any time here on him at all. Still about 0.4 of a second separating these two drivers for the third position. I'll tell you what, up at the front of the field though, Corey Logan is currently leading the way with a 1.75 second lead over the rest of the field. Very impressive work so far by the driver of that number 24 machine. It looks like maybe not coming down pit lane under this initial caution here might be working pretty good in their favor here. Of course, the question is going to be how will that work out for them in the long run here of today's race. Right now, Corey Logan is second in the overall 2024 championship, 362 points behind Brandon Feeney. Has not managed to take home any wins so far here in the 2024 championship, but has 7 top 5s to their name here this season, 21 top 10s. So Corey has been having a pretty solid season here in the overall 2024 championship. In just the season 16 championship, for just this 12-week spread that we're in the middle of, Corey is currently being scored in the third position in the championship right now, 25 points behind Michael Sparks. So both in the overall year championship and just in this 12-week period, Corey has a lot to be racing here, and not often that we get to see them up at the front of the field leading laps, so definitely excited to see what this 24 is able to do in the longer run here of tonight's event. A little bit further back though, Joshua Rudolph in the 188 K9P racing entry. Driver started on the pole, getting a little bit loose as we have another driver off the speedway right now. That's Daniel Sparks having a crazy time out here on the track. I didn't think they'd get that car fixed, but sure enough they did. It's back out on the speedway. But he just had a crazy moment down in the infield. So we'll take a quick look back at that right here. Scrapes up on the outside wall coming out of turn number 4, ends up down in the grass. It is a miracle that was not a harder impact into the outside retaining wall. Coming back up to live here, you can see Joshua Rudolph starting to close in on that 24 of Corey Logan. Driver out of Medford, Wisconsin here started out on the pole. Has gotten the gap down to 0.7 of a second. And coming into tonight's event, Rudolph being scored back in the 5th position in the overall 2024 championship. They are 55 points back from Michael Sparks. Again, this is for the full year championship, whereas in just this 12-week period, Rudolph is being scored all the way back in the 8th position, 16 points back behind Jason Gardner and 200 points off of our championship leader of Brandon Feeney. So Feeney right now in the 2024 championship is in a position where he can pretty comfortably ride around and just walk away with it. These other drivers are going to have a whole lot of difficulty catching up to him. But here in just this 12 weeks period, it is still anyone's game, and Logan and Rudolph, even Sparks back there in third, all have a lot to gain by just taking home their first race wins here of season number 16. Side by side for the race lead though, and Logan scrapes up against the outside wall, falling back here just a little bit. That's going to have Joshua Rudolph be our new race leader, coming across the line to complete lap number 18. Logan still following in tow. And once again, we see two very different lines being taken here by these two drivers. Rudolph all the way up to the top, Corey Logan all the way down to the bottom. But it's looking like Rudolph has the advantage here for the time being, as he is starting to pull away from that number 24 of Corey Logan here. Now up to about 5/10 of a second between the two of them, so Logan is losing a little bit of ground. Looking at their last lap times, it was a 30.66 for Corey Logan. No, that's actually their best lap times, excuse me. Looking back at their last lap times, a 31.99 for Corey Logan, a 31.63 for Joshua Rudolph. So definitely a little bit of disparity there in these lap times. But we're not even a third away through today's race, so we'll see how things shake up once we get into the closing chapters of tonight's event. But for now, Corey Logan's still running pretty comfortably up in the second position. Further back, Michael Sparks, one of those Canadian drivers running back in the Mooselander number 42 machine back here. Driver we occasionally see switch up their paint schemes throughout the season, but they've been running this one for a pretty decent amount of time now. Of course, driver out of Calgary in that number 42, along with Daniel Sparks back in the M&M's number 4. Coming into tonight's event, Michael Sparks is 4th in the 2024 championship, just behind Jason Gardner by a mere 44 points. And they're running up in 2nd right now in the Season 16 championship, 48 points out behind Brandon Feeney, who is running back in 4th on the racetrack right now. So this could be a big point stay for a lot of drivers who are really hurting to have one here this season. A little bit further back here, taking a look down at the battle for the 5th position. This is between Jason Gardner and Mark Kluge. About 0.2 of a second separating these two drivers as they battle for the final position, still on the lead lap here this evening. Jason coming into tonight's event, qualified up in the 3rd position, now running back in 6th, as Rudolph is going to be coming down pit lane. Rudolph comes down pit lane, that's going to cycle Corey Logan back out to being your race leader here. And it looks like Rudolph is going to be the only driver to pit this time around. So with Corey Logan back up to the front, that will be some more laps led to their name. But Michael Sparks is closing the gap here pretty darn quickly. He has it down to within 0.7 of a second. Now closing in on 0.6 of a second. And it looks like Corey Logan's going to be the next driver making the call to come down pit lane here. Sure enough, Corey makes it in, and it looks like all good in the neighborhood for that number 24, though that will cycle Sparks and Feeney out as your two front runners here, and the gap between them has closed up by a pretty considerable margin here as well, down to about 0.6 of a second for both of these two drivers who are battling up for the front. Will we see more takers down on pit lane this time around? I would imagine yes, because the gap is closing for the race lead mighty quickly, but no, Sparks elects to stay out, so Feeney is just gaining that ground here naturally. And he is gaining on Sparks very rapidly here. Last time by, Feeney was about 0.3 of a second faster than Sparks was that time around the speedway, and sure enough, got it down to about 0.1 of a second. Just like that, Feeney is gaining on that 42 like a rocket ship here. And now side by side for the race lead. I'll tell you what, if Sparks wanted to come down to pit this time by, not going to be able to with Feeney down to the bottom. But it doesn't look to me like Sparks intended to come down this time by anyways. So this is going to be your battle for the race lead up until we see these two drivers pit, and Sparks still falling back here down to about 0.2 of a second between the two of them. Trying to keep up with that 38 machine as we see a little bit of connection issues there for that 42 machine. Of course, a little bit of a hiccup. That's just a virtue of racing on the internet, sometimes against folks who are on the other side of the planet from you. Not in this instance, both these drivers are out of Canada. But sometimes you see just a little bit of technical difficulties out here on the speedway, just like you sometimes see mechanical difficulties in real-world motorsports. It looks like everything's stabilized for the number 42 machine now. Still falling back from our race leader, Brandon Feeney, though, down to about 0.5 of a second between the two of them, and the gap is steadily growing here. And I say that, and Sparks starts to stabilize and catch back up a little bit there across the front straightaway, but it's just not enough to really make too much of a difference here. Further back, we've got some battling going on. This is the 85 of Brian Zabelski, Joshua Rudolph, and Corey Logan. All three of these drivers are a lap down. All three of them are battling it out for the lucky dog position. And they should all be battling for the race lead once our three remaining drivers that need to pit end up coming on down here. Zabelski is going to back off a little bit, let Logan and Rudolph go on by here as they all start to catch up to that 45 of Mark Kluge, who's currently the last driver on the lead lap here for the time being. Of course, only 7 seconds back from the race leader, so they have a long way left to go before they have to worry about being lapped. But they're going to go ahead and pull it on up high. No reason to battle with these drivers who are on alternate pit strategies, because it's ultimately not going to help them all that much in the long run. Jason Gardner just had to take the tow truck to pit lane, though. I'm not quite sure what happened to Gardner there. He comes back out on the speedway. It looks like he was almost crab walking there just a little bit. Let's see if we can't try and jump back and figure out what happened to Jason. And it looks like we're not going to be successful on that one. Weird. Not sure what made that driver make the call to come down to pit lane, but sure enough, Gardner is now being scored 2 laps down as courtesy of having to get towed by the tow truck to get down there. Looking now down at the battle for the 4th position between Rudolph and Logan. This is still the battle that is raging on for the lucky dog position. So should a caution flag fly, whoever is in the lead of this battle will be the driver who gets put back on the lead lap. And of course, all these drivers who are currently a lap down, most of them are down on pit strategy right now. And a yellow flag coming out would massively mess up the strategy for them. So, of course, we hope that that doesn't happen, but you never know what might happen here on the raceway. We've seen stranger things happen here in the ASRC Oval Series by a long shot. Gap now growing here to about 0.4 of a second between these two drivers as they continue to duke it out. Of course, these were the two drivers battling for the race lead earlier on in tonight's event. And they should cycle back around to being the race leaders once we see Feeney, Sparks, and Kluge come down. And of course, once those three drivers come down to pit lane, they will be on much fresher tires than the rest of the field. So we'll end up having to see whether or not the alternate strategy works out for them. Corey's starting to close in here just a little bit. Got it down to about 0.3 of a second between the two of them. Still floating back and forth between 3 and 0.4 of a second, as it looks like Daniel Sparks is going to make the call to come back down pit lane here. Mark Royce also taking the tow down to pit lane. I'm not sure what's happening to all these drivers that's making them tow to pit lane. And now be scored 10 laps down in that 44 machine. Definitely some bizarre happenings here on this foggy Kansas afternoon here tonight. It's even more mysterious that anytime something seems to go wrong, it seems to happen outside the frame of the camera. Hopefully we can get some security down there and make sure there's not like a serial killer down in pit lane messing things up for us. Mark Royce back out on the speedway. Daniel Sparks making his way back out onto the speedway. So all these drivers that are mysteriously towing down to pit lane are here on the racetrack, as we do have Michael Sparks and Mark Kluge both coming down to pit lane here, both coming to do their respective stops. So that leaves just Feeney staying out. Once Feeney, oh, and Feeney comes down here as well. So that will cycle Joshua Rudolph out to the race lead once again, once they get back around the speedway here. Corey Logan still following just behind. Corey about half of a second back here from Joshua Rudolph. And coming across the line here, 37 laps officially completed, and Joshua Rudolph is being scored as your new race leader here. And still maintaining the lead over Corey Logan by about 0.6 of a second here between these two drivers. Feeney coming back out on the raceway, a 13-second deficit over our two race leaders here. And it's going to be Michael Sparks and Mark Kluge, the rest of the drivers still on the lead lap here. Brian Sabelski running back in the lucky dog position for the time being, and I say that as Jason Gardner manages to overtake him just like that, though. And Mark Royce just set the new fastest lap of the race, 9 laps down, with a 30.29 to his name. But definitely a strange evening here today at the Kansas Speedway. Joshua Rudolph leads the field as we pass the halfway point here, just a couple laps though. So we're going to take a moment. Let's ride on board with our race leader and appreciate some of the sounds of these powerful NASCAR Gen 4 machines. Right on board there with our race leader of Joshua Rudolph. I think in a driver's eye perspective of the racetrack really goes to show just how bizarre the weather is here for today's event. While we're right on board though, Corey Logan has come down pit lane, and now Rudolph is coming down pit lane here as well. This is going to be the third stop for Joshua Rudolph and the second stop for Logan. Feeney and Sparks both have already made 3 stops here this evening, as Feeney cycles his way around to being our new race leader here for the time being. We also saw a pass for position between Sadalski and Gardner for what was at the time the Lucky Dog spot, but right now that spot is going to Corey Logan as they went a lap down under this pit stop. And now you see the battle for the race lead between Feeney and Sparks. Sparks having to go low below Daniel Sparks in that number 4 machine, who is currently being scored 2 laps down. Trying to catch up to that number 38 machine. Feeney is the man to beat right now, both for the year championship and just for the 12-week season championship. That 38 is currently leading both of them right now. And I'll tell you what, every position counts here as we get into these final couple of races. Of course, after tonight's event, only 5 races left, both for season number 16 of the ASRC Oval Series and for the entire 2024 championship. We've been going all the way since back in mid-March, and we're going to keep going till the first week of December. And I'll tell you what, it's been a whole lot of crazy racing all throughout this 2024 championship in the most radical format change the league has ever seen. But I'll tell you what, it's been quite an adventure to ride along with these drivers as they challenge each other to this longer form, year-long championship format. And despite how long it has gone on for, it's still coming down to the wire for some of these drivers in terms of the points championship. Feeney starting to lose a little bit of ground on that 42 of Michael Sparks. You can see Feeney going down to the apron, trying to get every ounce of speed that he can down the front straightaway just to try and pull away from that number 42 machine, but it's just not really working for him. Now down to about 0.3 of a second as Sparks slowly but surely starts to close up on him. Both drivers pit right around on the same lap. Both were these drivers' third pit stops. So unless Feeney didn't take tires and Sparks did, which I'm highly doubtful of, these drivers should be on similar condition tires to each other right now. And again, maybe closing in here, starting to get ready to get within 15 to go. Feeney might be trying to save just a little bit just in case there's a late race caution, so he has something left to work with, to push with, should the field get bunched back up. But of course that is a big gamble on if a caution actually does come out here in these final 16 laps, because there is no guarantee that that's going to be happening. Sparks, on the other hand, he is really pushing with everything he's got now. Last time by, a 31.67 for Sparks, a 31.77 for Feeney. And now Sparks is moving in down to about 2 car lengths for the race lead. He falls back a little bit down there on corner entry, but immediately gains it all back up on corner exit. And Feeney once again going all the way down to the apron. Sparks pushes it down to the bottom of the track, but doesn't go over the line. Now nose to tail going down into turns 3 and 4, and just behind you can see Corey Logan, who is hoping to unlap themselves. So Feeney, Sparks, Logan, all drivers who have been battling up at the front of the field all day here today. And of course, Logan definitely wants to try and unlap themselves here as well, just in case the caution comes out, get themselves in a good position to try and battle for the race lead here in the closing chapters of today's event, should the opportunity present itself. Because, of course, if you do get the lucky dog, you have to start behind all of the lapped cars. But if Corey manages to get back up on the lead lap before a caution flag comes out, then they'll be able to start right up behind Feeney and Sparks coming to the green. Of course, all this is hinging on if there ends up being a caution. And considering how spread out most of the field is right now, I don't particularly see the chances of that being really high here. With 13 laps left to go, though, the field has gotten spread out, as well as this battle for the race lead, up to 1.10 seconds between the two of them. Feeney is seeming to somewhat comfortably pull away here. Of course, now there is that lap car of Corey Logan trying to get back up on the lead lap. in between these two drivers battling for the race lead, and I think that's just what threw Sparks off his game here. Having that car in between the two of them maybe messed up the draft a little bit, and now he's just having a real hard time getting back within about 1.2 seconds of our race leader here, Brandon Feeney. And of course, 12 laps left to go, only 3 drivers left on the lead lap. Barring anything crazy happening, our podium might just be locked in here. With Corey Logan going up to the high side, looking to try and make the move on the 38 to get themselves unlapped. Right up on the rear quarter panel of the 38, side by side through the corner. And just like that, Corey Logan has gotten back onto the lead lap here. Should a caution flag come out, they will be right in the mix, right in the thick of it, coming to the green on a potential late race restart. And that also begs the question, now that's all clean air between Feeney and Sparks, will we see Sparks be able to start catching back up to that 38 here? We did get the double high five from the flagman, so 10 laps left to go here. And will it be enough for Sparks to close that gap back up? He has already started closing it back up now. Just barely getting it below a full second here. But still, that is a lot of ground between himself and Brandon Feeney, and it's going to be very hard to be fast enough to close that gap here. Not without Feeney making some sort of mistake. Just behind, that's the K9P 188 of Joshua Rudolph, who is also currently being scored a lap down, trying to get his lap back here. And Sparks, once again, he closes the gap up just a little bit, but he loses it again right down the straightaways. I think Feeney might have just managed to conserve his tires a little bit better than Michael Sparks was able to. As Jason Gardner going to be coming down pit lane for his 4th stop here this evening at Kansas. An unnaturally high amount of stops for a lot of these drivers. So who knows what sort of gremlins are out here on the speedway causing issues for these drivers' cars that are making them have to pit here so often. And with so many drivers laps down just from issues on pit lane. Definitely bizarre to see here. And now Rudolph rapidly closing in on that number 38 of Feeney. But he does have a little scrape against the wall there. That's going to cost him a bit of ground. Of course, this battle with Feeney is not a battle for position, but should he be able to get around Feeney, he could potentially battle it out with Corey Logan for the 4th position. 6 laps left to go here is Kansas, as Feeney battling it out with lap traffic here. That's the 4 of Daniel Sparks. Corey Logan's right up there as well. And here comes Rudolph through this battle. Rudolph gets around Daniel Sparks, still looking to try and figure out his way around Feeney here as we get within 5 laps to go. Both drivers are catching up on Corey Logan here, as now Mark Royce is coming back down pit lane again. But Rudolph able to get around our race leader, Brandon Feeney. He is now within striking distance to battle it out with Corey Logan here. Going to be 4 to go as Feeney crosses the line. Only about 6 miles of racing left for these drivers to settle the score here, as it's going to be Rudolph and Logan, the 2 drivers we saw battling for the race lead in the early goings of today's event, battling it out once again as the last drivers on the lead lap. Both drivers washed up the speedway there. Rudolph gets up into the outside wall. He's going to lose the spot to Feeney once again, as now Feeney goes low, and he's going to try and get around that 24 of Corey Logan. Almost drifts up into them, but not quite. Sparks starting to close up the distance here just a little bit as Feeney battles with this lap traffic here as well, down to 7/10 of a second for this battle for the race lead. And Feeney has to worry about this battle going on in front of him between Rudolph and Logan. He does not want to get involved if something happens between these two drivers. He's going to go way down low as we are nearly 3 wide with lap traffic for the race lead here at Kansas. Feeney manages to clear the both of them as now Sparks 7/10 of a second between himself and the race leader, but he has 2 lapped cars to worry about who are battling it out side by side for their respective positions. Feeney goes way up high, nearly scrapes the corner there, and Corey Logan does scrape the corner just a little bit there. So it looks like Rudolph might be good to go here in the 4th position, but the white flag is up in the air. One more lap here at the Kansas Speedway. And we've got all sorts of cars battling here on the track. None of them are on the same laps as each other, but they're still throwing it down as if this were the battle for the race lead between all of them. There you can see the 42 of Michael Sparks up on the high side of the 24 of Corey Logan. He is way too far back to try and take the race lead here at this point. Now at the front in the 38, Brandon Feeney going to be coming across the line, being our 2nd ever winner here at the Kansas Speedway, and he will be taking home another win here with the ASRC Oval Series for the Gen 4 Championship. A driver we constantly see up at the front of the field. He has 18 top 5s to his name, but somehow this appears to only be win number 2 for the driver of the number 38 machine. It's a little weird to think about because he's up in the broadcast booth literally every single week, but this time he will be up here as a race winner here in the ASRC Oval Series. Alright, race fans, don't go anywhere. We will be back here in just a moment with some words with your top 3 finishers. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the Kansas Speedway. Still incredibly overcast and incredibly foggy, and maybe a little spooky here for almost Halloween. We're getting there slowly but surely. And it's going to be none other than Mr. Brandon Feeney taking home, which is weirdly only win number 2 this season. I feel like it's been more than that, but the stats say win number 2. How are you feeling here tonight, Feeney?
Feeling pretty good. Came into the practice, looked at the laps and where the fuel was, and I knew right away I was going to do the one-stop strategy. And when it comes to saving fuel, I know I'm one of the better ones in the league, and the Sparks brothers, are the other two. So I figure it's going to be a battle between the Canadians at least.
Fair enough. I don't entirely think of Kansas when I think of Canada, but you have certainly proven me wrong here. I guess, I mean, you did say you just kind of showed up and looked at the fuel count, so you took basically zero practice coming into this race, huh?
Oh, I took a couple practice laps just to see how loose it was going to be, and then I abandoned all that program after I put the first couple laps down. I just wanted to get that 5 bonus points for leading the first lap, and after that went to full save mode.
Fair enough. Well, you got bonus points to your name, you've got another race win to your name, and now you've furthered yourself even farther in both the year-long championship and just in this little 12-week period. So how are you feeling carrying that extra little bit of points lead into Charlotte next week?
I think for the year long, it's almost locked up. Um, I think I'm gonna have to screw up pretty massively, or just not show up for the next 6 weeks or whatever it is. The season of 12 races here, it's I think right now between me and Mike, and if this keeps going on, it's going to be a heavyweight battle.
Sure enough. And of course, a pretty varied selection of tracks here to close out the season. Of course, we got the 1.5 miler Charlotte, then head down to the short track of Martinsville before we go to modern day Atlanta and then back to Phoenix for a sort of side of kind of maybe short track. So it's kind of all over the place here for the rest of the season. Are you feeling good about your chances?
I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and not even try to worry about wins, but just try to keep good points runs going, keep the podiums going, and just come out here and have fun.
Fair enough. At the end of the day, as much as some people don't like hearing it, we are playing a video game here and having fun is the main purpose of all of this. So it's always good to hear that that is the main goal in mind.
Yeah, main goal is always having fun, even in the real car. Can't take it too seriously, or it gets very nerve wracking and very frustrating very fast.
Sure enough. And of course, don't want to get things frustrating up here in the booth either. So I'm not going to keep you here all night. I know you have things to do. So for now, who do you want to thank for making everything happen for your second win here this season?
I got to thank you for broadcasting, because it seems every time you broadcast, I get podium. So that's bonus points for me. Got to thank Jason and the guys for putting this series on. And then I got to thank all the sponsors you see on the car, Liquid Molly, and all that stuff. And if anyone that's Canadian watching this broadcast, we're going back modified racing next year in real life. So if you want to sponsor a real life car, let me know.
Good deal. Thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on taking home another win and furthering your points lead in both championships here this season. And I look forward to seeing you next week at Charlotte.
See you next week, little buddy.
And finishing back here in position number 2 in that Mooselanders number 42, Michael Sparks. You had a heck of a run here tonight. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. I knew at the end that I had fuel to make it. That wasn't a problem. I was taking it easy enough, and I knew that even though I was getting close to Brandon, he just is calm. And so my only hope was that either his tires would give out and I was doing better tire saving, or that, when I think it was Mark and Corey were battling there beside him, that one of them would screw up and take him out. But, it was a great battle to the end, and I'm glad we finished where we finished, and it was good, clean.
Sure enough, it could have been anyone's game here tonight. And I guess the big question is, you just knew you were doing pretty solid at the end of things. Did you come into tonight expecting to do this well?
I knew that I would be okay, so I was hoping, at least top five. I knew I had the fuel game down. I had figured that part out. I knew that what my fuel strategy was going to be. It was just a matter of whether I could make my tires last, and it seemed that they were okay. They were slower, obviously, but not as slow as when I was in practice. So I I could have, pushed a little bit harder and maybe made it a little bit closer, but all in all, I was pretty happy with it.
Fair enough. Definitely a heck of a race for you. And of course, coming into tonight's event, second overall in the 12-week championship here for season 16, fourth overall here for the 2024 championship. How are you feeling heading into Charlotte next week to try and close up these gaps here on Feeney?
Charlotte's a fun track, but I know that I'm not really great at Charlotte in these cars. I know that coming out of turn 4 is so loose, and I always have problems with that. If I can nail that, I might have a chance. But I'm just, if I can make top 5 in the championship, that's all I'm really worried about. And then of course, if I can beat my son, that's even better.
Fair enough. That's always a good thing to be angling for. Little bit of family rivalry never hurt, I suppose. And of course, it's like I was saying to Feeney, we've got quite a selection of tracks here for these final couple of races. You got big tracks, you got tiny tracks, you got everything in between. Do you feel generally good about what you have to face here in these final couple of weeks?
Tiny tracks and road tracks are my nemesis, so I'm pretty good with most of them. Looking, Martinsville is I'm going to be last at Martinsville, I guarantee you. The rest of them, Rockingham, I'm not great at, but the other ones, Homestead, Phoenix, and Atlanta, I'm okay with. Charlotte, I'm okay with, so I'm hoping mid pack at least for those.
Fair enough. Seems like a solid plan for me. But of course, before I let you go to let you start practicing for next week's event and celebrate getting another podium to your name, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Sparks. Who do you want to thank for making things happen here tonight?
I've definitely got to thank you for doing the broadcasts. I watch them every freaking week just to make sure that I see all the different angles of what I could have done and what I may have done wrong. And the guys organizing, Jason and all those guys organizing for this many years in a row is pretty awesome. That's why I came back. I knew there was going to be some great racing. All our drivers are awesome. I mean, we've had I don't know how many races with hardly any, just one or two quick cautions for just tiny mistakes. We're not super aggressive. We're all having fun out there, and it's just a great group of guys. So I thank them all.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on your podium, and I look forward to seeing you next week at Charlotte.
Thanks. Have a good night.
And finishing back here in position number 3, going to be that branded number 45 of Mr. Mark Kluge. It seemed like a really quiet race for you for the most of the goings, and then suddenly you found yourself up on the podium here tonight. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Didn't think I had any pace at all. Just got lucky with a few people doing the two-stop strategy versus the one-stop, and just had enough speed, I guess, to keep in front of them, but had nothing for Brandon or Michael.
Fair enough. I mean, you managed to work it out here tonight one way or another. Definitely was all over the place here in the pit strategies here tonight. But a third place finish is a third place finish, no matter how you manage to get it.
Yeah, I thought I threw it away. I came back down to top off right before we went green, and forgot to uncheck my tires, so I decided not to pit at all, and I thought that might have screwed me from saving enough fuel, but found a way to do it. Yeah.
Fair enough. Coming into tonight's event, you're back in the 9th position in the championship just for this 12-week period, right up around Joshua Rudolph and Jason Gardner. So how are you feeling about your prospects here for the rest of the season, and what goals do you have set for yourself for these final 5 weeks?
I'm hoping I can just make the races. I've missed a couple due to work, so it's always a blast being out here. So it's kind of my first goal is just to make all the races and have some good times. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, provided you are able to make it out to Charlotte next week, how are you feeling about your chances over there?
I think I might have missed the Charlotte race earlier this year, so it'll be my first time in these cars at Charlotte. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe get a little bit of sim time in tonight, but then go from there. I've been decent mid pack at mile and a half, so probably finish there. Hopefully rely on my long run speed to get me up in that mid pack.
Good deal. That seems like a pretty solid plan to me. Of course, that's coming from the person who doesn't drive the cars at all, so I'm going to take your word for it. Sounds good. But of course, before I let you go here for the night, I know you said you want to get some practice in for next week. But before you go, the microphone's all yours, Mr. Kluge. Who you want to thank for making everything happen?
I'd like to thank you for doing the broadcast every week. Jason and the rest of the team that organizes this. SM Racing Products for sponsoring. And then my friends and family for watching. I'd also like to give a shout out to my teammate Josh for getting his first pole for this race.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on the podium, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks. See you next week.
So you heard it here first, race fans. Your top 3 finishers here tonight: Brandon Feeney, Michael Sparks, and Mark Kluge here this evening. But of course, those weren't the only drivers here on the raceway. So how about we take a look back at our unofficial race results as they stand and see how things shook off for the rest of the field. Of course, Feeney, Sparks, Kluge are your top 3, the drivers we all just talked to. Back and forth going to be the 188 of Joshua Rudolph, which, as Mark just said, first ever pole here in, I believe, the entirety of his time here in the ASRC Oval Series. I may be mistaken on that, but definitely here this season for that 188. He's going to be rolling it off back in 4th. Now at the top 5 here in the CZ Robotics 24, that's going to be Corey Logan back in 5th, followed by the 85 of Brian Sabelski back in 6th, with league admin Mr. Jason Gardner in the number 93 back in 7th. Back in 8th, that's going to be the 4 of Daniel Sparks, with Mark Royce in the number 44, rounding out the tail end of this 9-car field here this evening. That said, though, that's about all we've had here from the mystery race here at Kansas. I'm not entirely sure this race actually happened. This might have just been a very bizarre fever dream, but one way or another, this is in our record books as happening, so that's how things are going to shake off here tonight. And of course, only 5 races left here for the remainder of the 2024 Gen 4 Championship, heading to Charlotte Motor Speedway next week, October 28th, same day, same time, Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Then after that, we have Martinsville, modern day Atlanta, so the super speedway version of Atlanta, then Phoenix, Rockingham, and then finally on December 2nd, we crown our 2024 championship at the Homestead Miami Speedway. So a whole lot of exciting racing action left to go before we crown ourselves a winner in the longest season that ASRC has ever had. But for now, though, that's just about all we've got. Thank you all for tuning in here tonight, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week. Have a good evening, race fans.